Okay. Roll call.
All right. John Hatcher,
Present.
Nick Burns,
Present.
Lacey Schwab here, and I'd like to welcome Larry Vandenberg,
Here.
new member. Staff Carrie Cease and our comprehensive plan consultant Connie Kruger.
Awesome. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, just to let everyone know, this is the comprehensive plan workshop, and we are not taking public comment tonight. It's just an opportunity for the Planning and Zoning Commission to go through the new draft chapters. We have already reviewed chapters 1 through 9. I don't know if you have any updates, but there will be 2 workshops with the City Council coming up, where they will also review and discuss the draft chapters. And then there will be public hearings. There will be a public hearing in front of Planning and Zoning Commission, and there will be a public hearing in front of the City Council. And that will be your opportunity to provide any comments if you would like to. So go ahead and give this to Connie.
Okay.
Can you zoom in a couple times?
Yeah. I sure will.
Last
I need
time
to
was
just
great.
for me, so no worries there.
Ah, it's much.
How's that? Is that
That's awesome.
Could I have one more?
one more? Okay, one more click.
So page you're beyond.
Thanks.
Okay. I need to go more. Carrie mentioned a little bit the process. Also, if anyone does want to comment, you're always free to, email or submit letters. Not just speak in public hearing, not everybody likes public hearings, so just a heads up on that one. Again, we're here tonight to talk about the state mandated update to the city's comprehensive plan. And we have covered, as Carrie mentioned, chapters 1 through 9, so I'm just going to go over these really quick. We have the purpose and requirement of plans, so this is where that requirement comes from state law. And then a chapter on the process that we've gone through on this. And as you know, it's been kind of a lengthy process given that we had COVID restrictions and other things that fell into place at certain times. The vision statement, goals and objectives, a chapter on property rights, natural resources, which really describes the natural setting that Rathdrum is in, and demographics and population and housing characteristics. And then we covered some of the community design and some of the community design standards that we're looking at. Things like enhancing the downtown, what do we do as we see growth occurring along Highway 41, wayfinding programs, and the residential design standards, which are, I think, an important part of this. That with subdivision that, we're really trying to break things down and have, kind of like this more neighborly scale of development, more amenities, things like that. Same with multifamily, and then some chapters on arts and culture and historic preservation. And after that, we moved into the land use categories and some information on the Coeur d'Alene Airport. And so, of course, the land use categories are where you really find, kind of some of the meat of how you plan to look as a community in the future. And so, and then the remaining chapters are transportation, public services, facilities and utilities, parks and recreation, risk planning, economic development. And then just
Could
kind
you
of
lift
tying
your
that
voice up
back.
just a little bit more? Ma'am, it's very difficult hearing you.
Sure. You can turn this up a little. Go ahead and test.
Is that better?
Keep going. Try again.
How's that?
Can you hear? You're just gonna probably have to.
There's no microphone.
Are you sure it's not?
Yeah.
Usually you can hear when he's talking.
Do it maybe closer to your mouth.
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yes,
better.
thank you.
Okay.
Let me know if you can't hear, because I have a really quiet voice, so. Can't even hear myself.
Yo.
So tonight, we'll be talking a little bit about land use, kind of digging down into that a little bit and making, especially with new planning commission member, bringing your awareness of what we've been working on relative to that. And then we'll move through the remaining chapters. So again, I'm not going to sit here and read them. I'm just going to kind of go through and recap them. And then the hearings for this, I think, are the end of July, 1st of August. Is that right, Karen?
Yes, so let me pull up my calendar. So we will have Wednesday, this Wednesday, so 2 days from today on the 14th, there is a workshop with the council. There is another council workshop on Wednesday, the 28th. The planning and zoning hearing is Thursday, the 29th. And then the hearing in front of the city council is on July 11th. And those will all be here, starting at 6 o'clock.
Wait, July 11th was already passed.
Sorry, August 11th.
August, okay.
So that's July at the top of my screen, but it has August on here. Thanks, Lacey.
I have a question. Is this available online?
It is.
Okay.
Yep, what we're looking at right now, Connie updated a couple chapters
Okay.
since the one that's posted today, but we'll post this new version in the morning.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We did do land use last time, but we might want to do
Yeah,
a quick
I think I'm just going to do a quick overview of this because I have added, a couple of the graphics to this chapter. And so what you can see here, these are actually some of the materials that we had at our open house. And one of the things that we really received out of preliminary feedback was this desire to create some specialized zone districts. And so this is actually a couple of the infographics that we have from them. And so, we have this concentration on creating some mixed-use districts, this kind of Highway 41 South area, which actually does become a mixed-use district.
Just the size of that.
Focusing in on the historic downtown and then some of the neighborhood nodes of the commercial nodes. And this is one of the graphics that we created that was just really kind of about the general direction of growth and how do we take, for instance, some of the light industrial areas that we really see out on the east side of town that maybe aren't really in the most appropriate locations, move them over to the west side where we plan to see more industrial in the future. And then kind of focusing toward that more residential and rural residential growth as the city moves out to the east. And so this is one of the items that we see that will either really to guide land use decision making. We do have a land use designation amount, but this is also just keeping in mind that general direction that we're looking at. This is one of the slides, again, from an earlier presentation. This is really about the characteristics of growth. And so before we started to really look at how Rathdrum wanted to work with its comprehensive plan, we looked at what was happening with the other cities. So a lot of the cities are undergoing comprehensive plan updates, and we see fairly high densities, things like that. And so this was really something that was provided early on without any of the information on Rathdrum. And so as we've gone through this process, what we've really seen emerge is the picture for Rathdrum is to retain a similar sense of community as currently exists, to target limited areas for multifamily mixed growth with low to moderate density ranges, to grow residential eastward but maintain it in a rural state prior to transition, and create neighborhoods with enhanced design for scale and interaction, create an enhanced downtown, site industry, as I mentioned earlier, and then support urban renewal as a planning tool for predictability. And so urban renewal is a relatively new tool to the city. They've had urban renewal in place for a while, but they really had no urban renewal plans. And so the nice thing about urban renewal is that when you create an urban renewal district, you create an urban renewal plan that goes with that. And so with that, you're bringing a land use plan, you're bringing information again on what you plan to do district's created, there's an understanding of basically what kind of growth will occur in the future rather than just having a big blanket zone district. So this is, kind of another thing that we see as being a good tool to complement industry as you move, a little bit in some areas on that. We talked last time about our land use categories, so I don't think I'm going to go over all of those, but we do have the future land use map. And so with this, again, we kind of see, taking that original concept that we had and coming through on the highway corridors and maybe creating some, mixed-use development in those areas, creating these, what we call the residential rural ag transition zones. And this goes down to about Hayden Avenue.
In the green.
In the green. And then in the yellow, you see all of the low-density residential that we're planning, and then some small pockets of medium-density residential. These are pretty much areas that already exist, and then the public land use designation. And then we see really moving the industrial over to this area of town.
Can you define the moderate or medium density and low density? What that?
Sure. Yeah, low density. I'm just going to move on to it. Sorry, you guys, for all the scrolling. Or just it is what it is. So we have a couple of residential categories. The first is established residential. So this is really the areas that are already in town that are older neighborhoods. And so it's really, let's keep that as is. And then with the low density residential, this is an area where we would have about 3 to 4 net units per acre. So really consistent with what the city has been doing in the past. To get away from PUDs and kind of these gated communities, what we have in here is a provision where you can have 20% of that area where you can do more flexible design, maybe bring in triplexes, duplexes, but with only about a 20% design variation. So what it would result in is kind of breaking up some of the traditional single-family developments with other small-scale duplex, triplex on a small portion of the development. So that's low density, and so you're really in that whole area, you're at 3 to 4 net units per acre, and then on that 20% area, you would be allowed up to 5. And then for the medium density residential, you would have between 4 and 12 net dwelling units per acre. And if you take a look at the current implementing zone districts, these are zone districts that are currently in the city. So again, most of the medium density residential that we have is in areas where the city already has it. And I think the only areas that we really see any kind of an exception on that are as we move into some of these little nodes. We allow for some medium density development to occur right nodes. And on some of the highway commercial. So those are the primary areas. And then the other thing too that I'd like to point out, I know it's kind of hard to see here, is this right here is the Coeur d'Alene Airport. And these guys right here are the basically like the safety and compatibility zones. And so, often I think people think of the airports over in Hayden, but the reality of it is that as the airport grows, there will be more overflight, noise. There will be obviously these safety zones to consider. And so what they really don't like to see in areas like that are high density. They don't like to see any kind of a confined population. So for instance, this isn't a really good area to put a school. It's also not a good area to put a retirement home, any kind of a facility where the people who are in it might have difficulty getting out. And so this is something, and that's basically in these areas right here that we see. And then this kind of softer line that you see out here, these are the overhead flight areas. So that shows you a little bit. And again, if we go back to that prior graphic where we kind of see the residential growth going further east, it's just a general trend that as we kind of grow industry and other things out here on this area of town, that we might want to explore moving further out into these areas. But again, this is really long term because your planning timeline is supposed to be 20 years. So this is just, let's think about what direction you want to go. There's no commitment to it, but just, kind of start to think about what the future around So, and again, the plan will be updated again in 5 years. So that's how that works.
So if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. Coeur d'Alene Airport Master Plan, again, is a very, it's a big consideration, and not as much here as perhaps in Hayden, but again, it's something to be aware of. The Coeur d'Alene Airport just updated their plan in 2019, and so they have some plans to decouple some runways and to extend some of the runways a little bit. And as they do that, what happens with that is those overflight areas, they tend to expand with a little bit. And so this just lays out in 2019 where things are in terms of what's happening or planning to happen with the Coeur d'Alene Airport.
I'm just gonna jump in really fast because I'm not sharing this document on the Zoom meeting. So if you would like to follow along with the document and you're watching online, the document is available on our website under the Planning and Zoning page, the Comprehensive Plan Update, and we're currently on page 65.
So this chapter, basically what we've done is we've provided a pretty robust chapter on the Coeur d'Alene Airport, and airports are interesting characters. They have what are called sponsor obligations and grant assurances. And so what that means is that when an airport receives federal funding from the FAA, they make certain commitments. And one of those commitments is to really be an advocate for safety and for their ability to continue to exist as an airport. And so this is why it's so important that the cities and the airports are talking, and the cities are really working through compatible amnesties with the airports. As growth encroaches on an airport, it does create potential issues. And so what the FAA really likes to see is they really like to see those agencies working together. There's not a mandate. There are mandates to plan for airports, but there aren't mandates that tell you how to do it. And so when we look at those safety compatibility zones, those are guidelines. But again, the belief in this area is that the reality, of course, is that the airport's very important to our local economy, and I think that everybody wants to work together to work the neighbors. And so, how you do it when you get into the zoning and you get into the details of it can involve quite a bit of discussion. But this really lays it out in one area so that there's an understanding of what the laws are that support it, but also the fact that you're not required to implement it in a specific way. And so that's basically what this chapter goes into. And it talks to you a little bit about the ground assurances that the airport takes on and what happens with that. So again, the airport's done a lot of really good planning. This is a land use map, and so what we've done is we've taken this mapping and we've interlaid it into the city's GIS. This is a good graphic that shows you where those safety compatibility zones and where those overflow areas are. And so of course, when we come over here into Rathdrum, these are the current city limits, and so as you see what we're doing with our plan is we're kind of coming in and we're showing these infill development areas where we're planning to do some future development. So this is going to be a real key area as we go down into this area here on what type of land uses to develop. So lots of good information in that area. As to transportation, as you're all really aware, we set at the confluence of highways 41 and 53, and we're in an area where there's a lot of really good planning that has been going on. Actually, ITV has been doing quite a bit of planning. KMPO has done a lot of planning. The city's in the midst of updating their transportation plan. So this chapter doesn't go in great depth to the city's transportation plan because it's been a long time since it's been updated and it's in the process of being updated. But the information that came from the public meetings has been provided to the Public Works Director, who's the lead on that planning. And it will be, of course, incorporated here. And so this is pretty much just mentioned that you're undergoing this update, and some of the things that are likely to come out of a transportation plan would be things such as traffic models, levels of service, crash analysis, signal warrant analysis, traffic impact analysis for developers, access management, bike ped policies, traffic calming, and other policies. So how this works from the development perspective is when a developer comes in to do a development, if you have a traffic model and you have adopted levels of service, and you really have an idea of where your crashes are occurring, and based on, you know, your growth projections and your traffic models, if you know where you're going to need to do signalization and things like that in the future, what happens is you have the developer do a traffic impact analysis, and then they're bringing all of that in and they're comparing it to all of that current data. And then they can look at where they're what are called level of service failures. And so that's basically when there's a certain degree of congestion or queuing at an intersection. And so there may be improvements that are required to be because of that. It may also guide the city's capital improvement plan when they plan to do this. So this is a really good thing that the city's out there doing this transportation plan update, and it's going to come in really useful for a lot of different purposes. Some of the existing concerns that have been expressed about transportation have really been focused on some of the traffic delays at Bakewell and Meyer and Highway 53. And in both of those locations, there are some traffic control projects that are planned. And there are also a number of locations that you can see in the commercial areas along Highway 53 and 41 where people were concerned. And we think that's probably because of the turning movement. So if you take a look out along the Highway 53 corridor, on the entire Highway 53 corridor, ITD had exactly the same kind of concerns, where there were so many access points and so much train movement that was occurring that they're actually going through and doing projects now to manage access in these areas. And so sometimes that involves, removing certain driveways, consolidating things in certain locations, creating down control systems, those types of things. And so, as we kind of look into the future with 53 and 41, I think those are some things the city will probably start to want to look at is access management. So again, we go back to that transportation plan update and access management guidelines would be a really nice tool to see.
So our transportation plan, does that include the state highway? Does the city of Rathdrum include Highway 53 west of the interchange?
I'm going to actually go through those plans with you time, so we'll take a look at them. So they actually do fall under the jurisdiction of ITD, but the city does work cooperatively with them. And so some of these projects, like what we've just been talking about, would be jointly planned, and then others are strictly by ITD. But there's a lot happening there, so we're going to take a look at some of what's happening. In terms of non-motorized, the city has been working for a number of years to create a connected pedestrian system that loops the community, and they're really close to making that connection. In fact, it may have been made at this point in time. But there was some feedback that we received in some of the process that there were some pedestrian connections along Meyer Road, which would be from Nagle to Bakewell, and then Bakewell from Meyer to North Right. And another process that's happened is a number of years ago, CAMPO and the planners from all of the cities met, and they talked about how to take and connect regional trail systems for non-motorized transportation. And so there is a project that CAMPO has put together that basically connects the valley with some of these trails. And that's a nice thing when CAMPO becomes involved, because then you can take some kind of those projects, because they can be a challenge. So as to your question on the regional planning, the projects that are in development, first is the ITD 53 state line to Rathdrum corridor plan. And I have a lot of information around the plan. But basically, this has kind of 4 different project segments. And it widens and reconstructs Highway 53 between the state line and Rathdrum. And there will be a new interchange at Pleasant View Road planned in 2026. So the projects that we look at first are really focused in on this segment from Hauser Lake Road to Bruce Road. And I'm going to past that, you can go ahead and read on that if you like. I'm going to move into the 53 route through turn lanes. And this provides for turn lanes between the city park and Salty Ranch Road, and also providing westbound traffic turn, or westbound right turn lane at Main Street. And so here's a list of the improvements. We have the extension of the center turn lane, reconstruction of the road base, addition of right turn lane to access Main Road, installation of storm sewers to reduce flooding, replacing the sidewalk and installing a longer culvert route just west of the park. And then we kind of moving back a little bit more into the the other elements of the project. We've got the Washington State Line, Hauser Road, and we also have the Pleasant interchange. So this is going to be a big change. I think probably the significant item here is that the approaches at Hauser Lake Road, Hollister Hills Road, Beck Road, and McGuire will be closed, and they'll all be routed over to that new interchange. So we'll start to see things really changing out there. And so when you look at that, from a mobility perspective, this really, kind of advances travel times and things like that. Obviously, works on safety issues that in a road like this. So the next significant project that we have is the ITD Idaho Highway 41 corridor plan, which is from Post Falls to Rathdrum. And you're all aware of that because you probably all have been riding through the construction zone. So the first part of this is, and these aren't happening in this order, but this is the new interchange down at I-90. And just some of the changes that we're going to be doing there to make safer ingress and egress off of I-90, shifting the location a little bit further to the north, trying to work the trail system together and things like that. So with this, we know that the Centennial Trail would probably go underneath the interstate and continue north. And then there are some other projects that are associated with that, with Mullen Avenue and Saltines. But the really big ones that there will be an extra through lane in each direction on 41, raised curb to prevent drivers from side streets from turning left onto the highway, an extra left turn on Mullen, and an extra left turn lane, 2 extra left turns, one heading north. And here's just a graphic from their plan showing you how it might look like. So the next segment is the Mullen to Prairie segment. And so with this, the highway will expand to 4 lanes, and there will be a 50-foot median where possible. There will be signals at 16th and Hope Avenue and some additional turn lanes. So, and then of course access management within the area. And the next section is going to be Idaho 41 Prairie to Lancaster. So this is getting up closer into our area. And as you're aware, again, we're constructing this railroad overpass. And this kind of describes what it's intended to look like and what it appears to look like. And the path that will be on both sides of the overpass. And the signals will be installed at Wyoming and Lancaster, with a replacement signal at Hayden Avenue. And the last segment will be Lancaster to Maple, and this is basically 1 mile of 2-lane highway will be expanded to 4 lanes, with also a 50-foot median or small curve. And then there will be a new signal at Maple with 2 left turn lanes, and an upgrade to the signal at Maple, and then a path near it. So, of course, it was planned to be completed in 2022, and, like most projects, it just takes a while, to get through right-of-way acquisition and everything, so it probably won't take any longer than that.
And I believe there will be pathway the entire way between Post Falls and Rathdrum.
Pathway meaning
Meaning,
like pedestrian?
yeah, or bicycle, or,
Yeah,
so it's not a sidewalk, it's a pathway. Like the ones we already have on the east side of 41.
That'll follow down?
Yep.
So the next plan that we have is the ITD State Highway 53 access study. So this is the plan I was referring to earlier. And this is really, kind of, it was actually a prelude to some of the projects that I've already talked to you about out on Highway 53. And at the time, basically what they did, they went through the whole corridor and they looked at, where the issues were, what was happening with the access management in the area. And they really realized again that they needed to reduce a lot of these conflict points. So the ones that are specific to the city of Rathdrum were accident history at the State Highway 53 Westwood and Meyer Road intersection, which we've already talked about. And then an accident history at Mill Street and State Highway 53. And then there is confusion and accident-prone intersections for the Highway 53 and Highway 41 crossover. And so we talked at a prior meeting about how important it is for the city to really figure out wayfinding. And this is another reason why it's not just, often we think of it as, it's kind of like a pretty tool. But in reality, it is something that we need to address public needs also that are related to safety. And then nighttime wild animal vehicle crashes at the urban rural interface. So you're all familiar with this out on the edges of town where you kind of get away from the city light and it's dark in those areas there. So the City Public Works Director is working with ITD on implementation of those projects. And here's a graphic from the State Highway 53 plan, and it's just kind of showing you where some of these problem areas are at that we just talked about. And they do have some proposed resolution, but in a plan like this, that's pretty much what it is. It's a plan, it's some early, items that they've identified. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what will actually be constructed. So with this, we see, references to some roundabouts, other things that can potentially help resolve some of those issues. And whether or not there'll be roundabouts or there'll be signalized intersections, those things all have yet to be decided. The next is the Hutter Corridor Study. And the Hutter Corridor Study, actually, the study process started in the early 2000s, and around 2008, an alignment for that study was actually adopted by the CAMPO board. And that was recently updated a little bit. It shows you the Hutter alignment. And so what the Hutter corridor is planned for is it's a bypass, basically, between I-90 and Highway 95 to basically, it's for, freight mobility, basically higher speed travel. And there will be a couple of different, interchanges that we'll see with this. And so we have one, as we move up in this area, kind of out in this area here off of Alvis. So as we look at that future growth map and we look at the city kind of moving out toward the east, it's possible as we move further to the east that we may have, some interest in what happens around the Hutter corridor. So that's really why it's been identified. And then the other thing to be aware of this is the earlier alignment actually went a little further to the north. So when we started this planning process, we were thinking that Hutter was going to be a much bigger, player in this.
I think there's also going to be an access at Wyoming.
Yeah, I think we have one kind of right in this area here. We've got another one at Poline and Prairie. It's pretty limited because we're talking about full highway interchanges in most of these areas, and there's quite a bit involved with that. If we talk about all the planning going on, they're actually, the cities and CAMPO have worked on what is called the Critical Arterial Corridor Policy. And this is looking through the area and making sure that all of the cities are planning together on how these arterials that many of us use to travel to and from the various cities in the area, how they work. And so you see here, Hayden Avenue, Prairie Avenue, Greens Ferry, just a lot of different roads within the area where there's planning going on. There is funding that is potentially being appropriated for that as projects are developed, things like that, access management policy, other things. So something they've been working on for quite a while. And then we have the Kootenai Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and so this is basically just a comprehensive plan that takes a lot of these regionally significant transportation projects and makes sure that they're included and that there is funding for that. So moving on to other forms of transportation, we have public transportation. And
Eventually.
so basically this is CityLink, and CityLink currently does not serve Routhroom with traditional service. It does provide for some on-call services, and I think as they work through funding issues, that eventually will probably move up into the Routhroom area. But it's always been kind of the funding for it has been pretty minimal. But this shows the new park and ride down in the Riverstone area in Coeur d'Alene. Options that are available are Ring a Ride, which I mentioned, and to take advantage of that, you would need to be 65 or older, or between 18 and 64 with a disability. And we also have paratransit service, and Kootenai Health actually offers some transportation. Some typos. And then of course we have the Spokane International Airport, which is in very close proximity to us, and then the Pappy Boynton Field. And so this is an area where our airport offers private air service, charter flights, flight training, fixed base operations, and aviation support services. And so Pappy Boynton is actually the largest general aviation airport in the state of Idaho, which is something that's I think again pretty important to our local economy. So that's transportation. And then we move on to public service facilities and utilities, and in this section, we're really just focused in on, what form of government do we have?
So this is new tonight, correct?
Yeah, the
Okay.
different commissions. It talks a little bit about the education services that are within the area, library services, the post office, fire protection, all things that folks here are familiar with. Electric power, natural gas, and phone, who provides solid waste, who provides water, and who provides sewer. So it's pretty much just kind of capturing where we're at right now. And then for parks, recreation, and special sites, the city has a really robust park plan. The park plan is also undergoing an update. And so they've got a lot of great policy within that, and so this chapter really just kind of inventories the existing parks that the city has, and it talks a little bit about the level of service that the city maintains as we move forward. A little bit of information there on the Raptor Mountain Park and general levels of service. And then the last chapter is on risk planning, and this is something that really emerged when we did the stakeholder interviews, is this need to focus in on emergency management planning and being prepared for a variety of different things that can occur. And so this chapter really starts with an understanding of what is happening in the area, in which we have the local emergency planning committee and the city of Routhroom and all the other agencies in the area are on this. And so there's a number of different projects that they're involved with and plans. And so here's a list of all of the different plans that this group is involved with. So you can see with this is everything from, an all-hazard mitigation plan, which could really include, almost any of the other categories that are identified here.
And we just updated that and adopted it this year.
Yeah. And then Fire Smart, hazard ID and risk assessment, hazardous materials, multi-hazard. In a lot of those areas, what their focus is it's on rail and on freight, and any kind of chemical spills, things like that are occurring out on the highways and railways, and how you manage it down the event. Wildland urban interface, homeland security, we have water quality, evacuation planning task force, so family preparedness, storm ready community. So the reason that I want you to see those is because as we went through the public process, we talked, to people about, the items that they were concerned with, and what we see is that a lot of that planning activity is happening, here within the region. And of course, we'd be managed by Kootenai County, but we would have a variety of different people that participate if you have an event. So when we went and took a little bit of a look at items that were specific to Routhroom, there were, of course, the concerns about the transportation incidents, which really would be part of that. Fire events, snow events may be something, to focus on a little bit more. And then really doing a lot of training, scenario planning, and monthly preparedness with members of the staff. And also this idea of possibly creating a new emergency commission that is here and is locally based with the city to be able to respond to that. And so basically the order of priority of concerns for Rathdrum residents were wildfire, winter storms, hazardous spills. This kind of shows you an order of priority. And they were not very concerned about, air, water, soil contamination, health hazards, the airport, or flooding. And I think with flooding, we do have floodplain here in the city, but we also are a FEMA city, and so we have flood control ordinances that really require to be developed and rebuilt with certain elevation above the flood, or at least out of the rain. So that helps to control that. So with that, there was a little bit of an action plan for some of these items to do, at the city level. So our last chapter tonight is on economic development, and this chapter is really focused in on the fact that Rathdrum is sitting within this larger combined MSA of Spokane and Coeur d'Alene. And the current MSA population is now 750,000 people. And so what that means is when you start to become a larger MSA like that, there are different people, different companies that look at you and they say, well, why are people congregating in those areas? And the reasons can be adequate utilities, there can be adequate transportation systems, there can be a lot of things that we talked about. Having international airports is really important. So this is just kind of creating the setting for the fact that as versus a little city that's maybe 200 miles out in the middle of Montana, very far from other regional hubs, we're sitting in an area where there's a lot of activity going on. And so with that, when we look at job growth and other things like that, and the ability to commute, the ability to grow and build your own local regional economy, all of those things are enhanced by having these transportation systems and other things in the area. And the other thing that we kind of hit on here is that Rathdrum in and of itself is also a little bit of a centralized hub for some of the more rural areas that fall into the northeast and northwest of Rathdrum. So there is a lot of opportunity within less than the 30-mile distance. And so just looking a little bit at our occupations, we primarily, and this is census data, but we can just kind of see that we've been focused in on service occupations is going to be a big category for us. Sales and office categories, management, business. There are a variety of different regional economic development agencies within the area. I mentioned earlier the Rathdrum Urban Renewal Agency, and the Urban Renewal Agency actually has 2 urban renewal plans. One is the West Rathdrum Urban Renewal Plan, and the other is the Silverado Urban Renewal Plan. And both of these plans are in their early stages of really implementation, and so we're looking at projects that are done today. We have the Rathdrum Chamber of Commerce, and the Rathdrum Chamber of Commerce has 131 members, and in the information they provided, they've created, or they represent over 4,000 jobs, and 60% of their membership is from Rathdrum-based businesses. And so for their membership, they have quite a number of members that are from nonprofits, real estate, and restaurants and catering. We also have the Coeur d'Alene Area Development Corporation, and this is where you may all be familiar with the old name Jobs Plus. And so this is basically Jobs Plus. And Jobs Plus is kind of a number of different private employers that came together and decided that they wanted to create jobs in the area, and they've been working together for a long time. They brought in public partners, and so basically they have a membership fee that is paid to participate in that, and I'm sure they raise grants and they do a lot of other things too. But since during its existence, they indicated that there were 7,000 jobs that were created and more than 62 million in property tax. So some of what they offer is identifying potential sites, bringing in site selectors, facilitating permitting processes, looking at different incentive programs, they help with getting the grants. And then really a big area that we've been involved with lately is the workforce development, working with folks like Idaho College, others to make sure that if they're looking at bringing a company in with the employment base that is there for them, that they have the skilled workers that they're looking for.
And also workforce housing.
Workforce housing has become a big issue for them with race recently. They do a lot of, it'll take sometimes several years to bring in a company. And so with that, they want to be sure that the companies bring all their employees in the area, that there's housing for their employees. So, Panhandle Area Council is a economic development district, and so these are funded through the EDA, which is a U.S. Department of Commerce branch. And so there's a lot of economic development planning that happens with this, and then they also work quite a bit with the private sector. And there's a community economic development strategy that is developed, and it's developed for the entire region, where the different leaders in government and commerce, private business, come together and we develop economic development strategies for the area. And those are submitted to the EDA. We have the Small Business Development Center, which is here, of course, to help small businesses. And one of the things that we really heard during this process is the desire for Rathdrum to become, a little more self-sustaining, that fewer people would need to leave to go to jobs and, kind of commute external to the community. And so with that, when we look at some of these areas that we talked about before, these also facilitate some of these economic development opportunities. So again, looking at that central business district, we looked at maybe expanding it, a little bit into the surrounding area with opportunities for, maybe a little bit of mixed use in there. So again, the small business development that can occur. Same in the commercial and neighborhood amenities. Those are the coffee shops, the hair salons, those types of things that can be located not in the middle of a neighborhood, but an arterial collector intersection. We've identified a couple that would probably be and then looking at the the mixed use areas, and we have one identified south on Highway 41, and then one identified as we head out to the east, just for a short segment there, out Super Line. And then the industrial owners, of course, are always an opportunity. As I mentioned earlier, we can use urban renewal funding also to be able to facilitate development in these areas. But those, by kind of cleaning that up, putting in the appropriate areas, that also allows us opportunities to build a local economy. So there's just, this one of the slides again from one of the meetings, just some of the feedback that we've received. So, a vibrant downtown, live work, office opportunities, moving light industrial, creating a tech corridor, maintain the existing commercial on Highway 41, create neighborhood homes, that type of, retain a little bit larger lot sizes, which we, in the residential, we're not looking at changing things, a lot. So,
And the commercial self-contained.
yeah. So that's where we're at with the comprehensive plan. So do you guys have any questions? That's a lot of information.
So on 53, somebody's idea was traffic circles to accommodate the.
The ITD plans that show the traffic circles.
Yeah, so the that was an early planning document. So what happens when those planning documents are developed is that they throw out kind of the known solutions at the time, but it doesn't mean that a traffic signal would necessarily be the solution, but more that they need a traffic control of some type in that area. And so what would happen if those projects that I went through earlier, where it actually is they move toward more detailed planning and they get the funding to do the planning, that's when they really go into and they examine those further and they look at, does the signalized intersection make more sense here? Does a roundabout make more sense? Roundabouts tend to have bigger footprint. So whose property does that impact? What's the cost? And then another really big thing to look at is there are some situations where a roundabout will prolong the life of an intersection, and there's other cases where it doesn't. And so that's another thing is modeling traffic volumes and looking at that particular area and figuring out is which of those solutions tends to be a better solution. So yes, in the early document, they had shown that, but I don't necessarily know that that's exactly how it will happen.
It's on page 76. They're also showing proposed connectivity between the end of Main Street here down to Greensferry. And we have examined that several times. It's unlikely to happen anytime in the near future because, of course, a lot of that is floodway or floodplain. And it would also displace a lot of the folks down in the multifamily development, Rathdrum mobile home community, so. Maybe someday.
They talked about that 20 years ago when I moved here.
Uh-huh, yep. We've been talking about it for a very long time, so.
Is there any talk about tying into like where the old IGA is now, Weimar,
There,
so that there's a crossing there for those people trying to get out of that subdivision and Weimar and all those services there, because you kind of hobble everything.
so that's actually on Highway 41. We're looking at the Highway 53 plan here. Highway 41 plans, I don't believe at this time extend past Bakel. So hopefully they'll have, ITD will come up with a plan for SH 41 north of town in the near future, because there's several, the intersection at Diagonal is horrible. The intersection up at Twin Lakes going into the community or to, what road is that on the other side?
Scarcella?
Scarcella Road. Those are all bad intersections. And of course, the speeds on that road are, I used to live up in Twin Lakes, and it's like taking your life in your own hands to go back and forth.
It
So,
helped by putting that turn lane in there.
yeah.
It didn't alleviate everything. Like all those people coming out of Twin Lakes on the highway.
Yeah, so we only have, within city limits, there's probably less than a half mile of roadway on SH 41. Maybe a mile, but probably a lot less within our city limits that we would share with, so.
The Hutter project, that's supposed to alleviate 4153 corridor?
Yes, so that would be, again, it's going to be all probably below grade, so there will not be commercial development on both sides of it. Or if there is, they'll have to have backage roads to get there, because there will, between Highway 41 and where it gets off at Highway 53, there will only be like 4 or 5 interchanges.
Are they gonna do overpasses where Lancaster and,
Over or underpasses.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but, things like that, like the idea of, Highway 41 North plan, that's something that we can put into the comprehensive plan, and kind of spark the thought, because just like you identified, you live in a community for a long time, it's like everybody kind of knows what the problems are, and what happens is somebody works on it for a while, then they get dropped. And so the nice thing about it when you put it in a plan is at least, that they're there and they're in front of the decision makers to keep looking at, oh gosh, yeah, we're talking to ITD. Well, let's ask them if they can do a little more planning in this area. So that's a good suggestion.
So we should probably put in
Like
Highway 41, 53 to, gosh, what's the name of that road up there?
Scarcella?
No, we probably won't go all the way to Scarcella because we don't include that in our
City limits is right there at Diagonal.
AOCI. It's right at Diagonal, but I think we would probably go up to Willitson Road. For probably there would be a fully actuated light there, and try to move some of the traffic that turns now at Diagonal Road, because it has that weird alignment, move that up to Willitson Road, and punch that through over to Diagonal.
Okay, do you guys have any other questions or anything that you want me to go back in and look at again, or?
Any concerns? So I will get this document out to you tomorrow, and Connie's going to continue with those last 2 chapters. It'll also be on the website, and as soon as the next 2 draft chapters are up, I will send you that one as well.
So the chapters are all in. What will go on it?
Oh,
is-
okay.
I just saw some typos. So
Gotcha,
I'll fix
gotcha.
the typos and then, but the plan's pretty much done, so it's just putting the appendices in. There's a pretty extensive section that the city has in its comprehensive plan of goals and policies. And really your old comprehensive plan didn't include any of this kind of information. It was just a really big set of goals and policies. And so they're good. Again, because if you're in a town, the same ideas, they're out there. And so the policies tend to stay on the test of time. And so, those I have them incorporated right now, but I'll just refine them a little bit based on, so those are going to be the 2 primary changes that are the same. It was, kind of fixing the last 2 typos and some languages in it. So,
And then we'll have the workshop with council on Wednesday. If there are any updates from council, of course, we'll update those and send out to you. So this is really the last workshop with you guys. Next time you will see this plan, it will be for the public hearing. So as we forward these documents to you, go ahead and look through them. If you have questions, comments, concerns, email them to me so that we can get those addressed before it comes back to you for public hearing.
And that's the 29th.
That is the 29th of July. Yep, that's a Thursday.
yeah, and if you guys have any questions, you're always you're welcome to give me a call or give me a call too, just if you want to just discuss it. What does this really mean? How does it work? More detail.
Where's your office at?
I'm down in the Killeen area.
Okay.
So, yeah.
It's close, I'd come up and bug her.
Yeah. But yeah, that's, so anything, just feel free to reach out. So. All right, well, I think that's it.
Okay, well, if you guys don't have any questions or anything, want to go ahead and adjourn or?
Meeting adjourned.
All right, thank you everybody, and we will see you guys